Hello, America. It's Thursday. It's 10 o'clock in one place, 12 o'clock in another, 3 o'clock in another place. Pick your place. It's us, Will Johnson, United America First. Barry Nussbaum at your service, the founder of American Truth Project. Hi, Will.
How's it going, Barry?
I'm ready for a big show today. We got a lot to talk about. I'm on my new computer. Hope I don't screw things up. Spent all night trying to figure it out. If Will Johnson was here, it would have taken 5 minutes, but I'm in the older
2.3.
generation. I'm a little
2.3 minutes.
slower.
Yeah, just 2.3 minutes.
There's a story that's been circulating ever since the one and only presidential debate between the two leading candidates, one that got tens of millions of votes and one that was crowned monarch of the Democrat Party. You know who I'm talking about. And it was said in the debate that Donald Trump accused Kamala Harris as supporting taxpayer-funded transgender surgeries for illegal aliens that were in custody. Well, get this. First of all, she said that's a lie or something like that. The New York Times, of all places, has come out and go, it's true. So let's be clear. All of these people, that's one day of border crossings. Take a look at that picture. That ought to scare the hell out of you. Coming through the open border, the Border Patrol is just letting them in. They take their name and contact information and give them a cell phone and a charge card and instructions on where to go, blah, blah, blah. But also, they hand off the privilege that they can have a sex change operation paid for by the government. The New York Times says she has said it. Time magazine, that called Trump a liar, said, quote, the wildest sounding attack line that Trump used was basically true after saying that Trump's claims were false. And the origin of the story is, as a presidential candidate in 2019, Kamala Harris filled out a questionnaire saying she supported taxpayer-funded gender transition treatments for detained immigrants. Now, let's talk about the cost. Take a look at all those people pouring across the border illegally. Let me tell you what the cost is, because this is going to shock you. I mean, it's really, really going to shock you. Gender transition surgery for a minor operation is $6,900, and it can go up to $63,400, according to the American Medical Association. And that does not count hospitalization, recovery, psychological counseling, hormones, aftercare, reversal surgeries. So, I mean, we're talking ridiculous amounts of money. Now, I don't know how many of these illegal felons want their things chopped off or vice versa. But why isn't this widely known? Why do I have to dig this stuff up? Why isn't it on the campaign trail?
You know why? Because they don't want people to know. So you know it, and I know it, and we just have this thing like because we know it, just automatically everybody else should know this. And I know you go through that, but like, how do you not know? You talk to people all the time. How do you not know this? Right? It's like it's kind of frustrating because a lot of people don't know because they've done a very good job on what information is relayed to people. And they keep certain information suppressed as much as possible. Let me give you an example, Barry. You know, they had a DNC not too long ago. And
Yeah,
in
we
doing
saw
it,
it.
and during the DNC, they were waving flags in the DNC. Now we know what flag they really love, but what flag were they flying in the DNC? The American flag. They were flying the American flag. When you look at the DNC, all of them were holding the American flag. They were waving it. Not a single sodomite flag in the building, or at least on camera. It wasn't a single one. And why did they do that? Because they don't want that to be the forefront. They don't want people to think about it. because there's a lot of people that's in the party that, how do I say this, that don't agree with it. But but they're still, and they don't want that to be their whole gist, right? They don't want people to know that this is something that they're pushing. You got people coming into the country, shouldn't be here, and they're going to provide these services to these people in the country. They don't want that information to go out, because we actually have Americans in the country that are struggling at the grocery store, at the gas pump. So they're going to suppress this information as much as possible. That's the reason why people don't know.
Well, don't you think Trump ought to make a deal about it? I mean, how many people, just pull a number out of your ear. How many people, regular American taxpayers like Will Johnson, want to shell out $63,400 plus for gender affirming care for felons that broke into the country illegally?
President Trump actually has said something about it. They didn't keep talking about it because they don't want people to focus on it. But they are focusing on people eating cats and dogs. You see? You see how that works? We'll focus on this, people eating cats and dogs, but we're not going to focus on them doing this surgery. We're not going to focus on that because it is 100% true, and they don't want to bring light to it. Barry, you know what? When Joe Biden was running, he did the exact same thing on his website, front page of his website, because a lot of people don't go to the websites. He had everything on there about the sodomite community. Kamala Harris, in her policies that she finally put up on her website, there's one policy in there to help the sodomite community, but it's very minimal. And that's the whole thing. That's one of their biggest issues, and they don't bring it to the forefront. And when President Trump says something about it, keep it down low. But we'll talk about cats and dogs.
That's interesting. So it's literally being de-emphasized because
Yes.
it's a really bad, how shall we say, issue for the Democrat platform, because
Yes.
I can't imagine more than a couple of percent of American voters. I mean, I'm talking about taxpayers,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yes.
you already are angry about all the money going to weird places overseas that you can't figure out why they got an extra billion here and 5 billion there. But something that's close to home, where these people are running wild in the streets of like 50 cities or 100 cities.
Yep.
I don't want to contribute to the $65,000, $100,000 per guy that wants
Per
to be
case,
Betty
right?
instead of Barney. What's that?
Yeah, it's per case, right? It's per case.
Oh, yeah.
Per each surgery.
The doctors aren't giving discounts. They're getting paid retail. And then they bring the cases on.
So there's no bulk discount.
Oh, no. You know, if you look at this picture, this is one day, okay? I mean, look at that crowd. That's a day.
Yeah.
And that poor Border Patrol guy's out there giving instructions. Line up over here for phone cards. Get your cell phone in this line. Get your bus pass to Chicago in this line. Have a nice day. God, they must be miserable. You know, on a similar subject, I can't believe what I'm going to tell you right now. We've talked about this before. A California judge has just ruled it's illegal for a school district to inform parents that their minor children are changing their gender. I'll say it again. A California judge has just ruled it's illegal for any school district, and that includes the staff, obviously, to inform the parents of a minor child of theirs that the kid is going from Barney to Betty and is signed up for gender transition and or hormones or name change or pronoun change. They can't tell the parents anything. Here's the guy, this brilliant judge. I'm just stunned. His name is Michael Sachs. He ruled against the Chino Valley Unified School District, and this is now permanent. And then to make it worse, Governor Newsom, your favorite governor, who you ran away from to escape to Texas, signed a bill, AB 1955, that expressly prohibits school districts from letting parents know whenever their children want to transition. In other words, you just make a decision and you can go to the other side, right? But your parents can't know. I am just stunned. There's a guy, Jonathan Keller, president of California Family Council, said moms and dads have both a constitutional divine mandate to guide and protect their kids.
Yes.
And AB 1955 egregiously violates this trust. You know, Will, I totally agree with this guy. Can you imagine if this was your family or you? Wow.
You know what? So in California, the Constitution is no longer valid, is basically what they're saying. That you, the parent, have no right in the say-so of your child. And you know, they put this out there as if they're doing this to protect the child. This is how they play this out there. They're doing this to protect the child, because if the child is not able to transition, then the child might do some, damage to him or herself. So we're here to protect the children from the parents if need be. This is disgusting, Barry. This should never this is like really happening. And every time we come on here together, we're talking about crazy stories that they are doing, and they don't want us talking about it. Like they don't want us saying anything about it. But yet they're doing these crazy things. At what point do we protect the children? And how often have you heard me say something's wrong with our society?
Every time we bring this up, and you're right. I mean, a 15-year-old kid can't buy a gun,
No.
Can't buy cigarettes,
alcohol,
can't buy alcohol, can't get on a plane, can't open a bank account, can't sign a contract, can't register to go fight in the army, right? But they can cut their parts off, or they can make a decision about an irreversible physical damage to their body and screw up their mind forever. And that is okay in California.
Yeah, and they're putting them on drugs. At one point, I remember growing up, there was this program called DARE. And the whole program was about not putting kids or getting kids to get on drugs, to fight against drugs. And here they are now putting these kids on drugs without the parents' consent.
And wait a minute. And it's illegal to tell them. It's illegal to tell them.
So what happens when they tell
12-year-old talk to
that
his friend in the bathroom and go, you know what? If we say we're the opposite sex, we get to go in the girls' bathroom and shower with them. I mean, there's a lot of 12-year-old boys that would go for that, and all we got to do is take these pills. Oh my gosh, this is insanity. Completely insane.
It really is.
Get out of the lives between the parents and the children. You can't do anything else underage, but you can change your sex and screw up the rest of your life. California is a nut farm. No wonder we both escaped.
Yeah, exactly. I still have family in California. I have family and friends still stuck in California. So did he sign that today?
It was last week.
Last week. Okay. So I didn't even know this. And I'm going to have to reach out to my family members that have children, young ones, and say, what do you think about this? Enjoy California.
You voted for it.
Yep.
Blech.
Actually, I don't think
So,
they did.
well, yeah, they didn't actually vote for that issue.
Yeah.
That
I mean, I
they
don't even
vote.
think they voted for the government that's currently there, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, maybe. As we all know, the rhetoric of violence and encouragement of violence is out of control, and now it's spreading to JD Vance. The New York Times has put out some really vile stuff that if JD Vance is elected vice president, he's going to push his theory of creedal nationalism, which basically means that white people's creed is above everybody else's. And all these commentators are coming back and going, he's a mixed race family. He's got biracial children. His wife is not white. Um, his in-laws aren't white. They're one big happy family across the color barrier. But they think that he's a white nationalist, or they're saying it. And not only that, um, they're talking about the fact that, and a couple people have mentioned this. I'm looking at, like, Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, goes on after a long article saying, so now the New York Times is directly calling JD Vance a Nazi. This is the kind of regime propaganda that nearly got President Trump assassinated. What else can we conclude except the New York Times wants JD Vance dead?
Yeah.
Donald Trump Jr. said, just months after a psychopath tried to assassinate my father, the New York Times is now openly trying to incite violence against JD Vance. P.S. JD is the father of 3 biracial kids, which makes this smear even more disgusting. They should apologize in public. And it gets worse. Now they're also calling JD Vance anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. This is unbelievable. JD Vance is a great supporter of Israel because he's a believing Christian. And I can prove it to you. How am I going to prove it to you? Watch this video and listen to him in his own words.
Care about Israel is because we are still the largest Christian majority country in the world, which means that a majority of citizens of this country think that their savior, and I count myself a Christian, was born, died, and resurrected in that narrow little strip of territory off the Mediterranean. The idea that there is ever going to be an American foreign policy that doesn't care a lot about that slice of the world is preposterous because of who Americans are.
Way to go, JD. He believes in the Bible, as we do. And as he put it, there will never be an American foreign policy that doesn't support Israel, except for maybe the one that might be run by Kamala Harris and her group of I love Iran, I hate Israel friends and supporters. And we've talked about it. She's supported by people that openly are, for all intents and purposes, the same as Bernie Sanders, who hates Israel and makes no secret about it.
Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Presley, AOC, Fire Marshal
100%
Bowman,
true.
no longer there, but
Just for 3 months. He's still there, bro.
Yeah, he's a
there
lame
till
duck.
January.
Yeah, he's
right?
he's a lame duck. He's a lame duck.
Cori Bush is too, and they're screaming every chance they
Another
get.
lame duck. Yeah. But all of them, they hate Israel, and they've expressed it over and over and over again. And of course, they're saying this about JD Vance because they have nothing else. Let's make up a lie about JD Vance and trying to say that he's a white nationalist. And they forget about his family. You know why they do this, Barry? Because they know most people that read the New York Times, that look at the government state liberal media, they know that they're not going to go out and investigate themselves. They know the people that religiously listen and watch them would never, ever go do the research on their own to find out if it's true about JD Vance. So they'll just take it and they'll run with it. And this is the reason why they're able to do it and get away with it. It's called a smear campaign. Nancy Pelosi already said it. You know, they come out, they do the smear campaign by telling the government or the government state media what they want to put out there. And then when it comes back to them, they'll just confirm it. Same thing here. They're lying about JD Vance. And then when it goes back to the New York Times and they say, well, this is the reason why they say it. And you know why they're going to say it, Barry? Can I say it out loud here? Can I say the reason why they're saying he's a white nationalist? Because of Project 2025. That's why. They have nothing to do with it.
Which he didn't write. And according to Trump, he's never even read it.
Yep. Have nothing to do with it. Just like that, everything else, they're lying because they don't have anything. They can't say that President Trump did a bad job when he was in office because he did a phenomenal job. They can't say anything bad about JD Vance because he's an all-around good guy. I mean, so they can't, so they're making up something. Make it up,
I'll tell you,
because the people that listen to him will believe it.
You know, piling on, Trump, when he was president, was called anti-Semitic all the time.
Yep.
And nobody apparently that listened to those stories. I heard it from Jews that said, you know, Trump's anti-Semitic. And I'd say, really? Well, that's interesting because his daughter is Jewish. His son-in-law is Jewish. His grandchildren are Jewish. He goes to Sabbath at their house and says the Jewish prayers with them and has done more for the state of Israel than any president in American history. And
they've named locations after the man.
Yeah, they got statues of him there. They've got neighborhoods after him. The Abraham Accords were the greatest single peace achievement in the last 50 years.
Yes.
He didn't get the Nobel Prize, the Peace Prize. He should have, because, well, he's anti-Semitic, Will.
Yeah. So when you talk to them, what do they say?
Don't matter.
What do they say?
They just don't.
What do they say when you relay that information to them? They say, "Well, I don't know about all of that. I don't know
about that." Well, you gotta look it up. I'm not making this stuff up.
How did I know?
Right?
How did I know?
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that.
Where did you get that news? And they'll say MSNBC.
Yeah.
And they're proud of it. I go, well, do you watch that regularly? Well, that's where I get my news. I get some of it from TikTok. It's like, oh my God, what are you, 12? And by the way, that was a Jewish doctor. So
a doctor,
education does not mean you're smart, Will.
That's true.
Let's make that clear.
That's true.
So speaking of anti-Semites, and this is a real one, there's a gal in Sweden who became famous in high school for deciding that the oceans were going to rise and wipe out all the cities in a couple of years, and all the whales would have nowhere to swim up north, and the icebergs were melting, and greenhouse gases were destroying the planet, and and by 2025, millions of people would be dying. Of course, this woman, she's now an adult, had no evidence of anything, but she became the poster child for the end of the earth. And I'm referring to Greta Thunberg.
How dare you?
Who is a complete and total imbecile.
Yes.
She was just named Anti-Semite of the Week after she was arrested with pro-Palestinian demonstrators in Copenhagen last week. Here she is, all grown up. She gets arrested a lot, and she's wearing a keffiyeh, having just been screaming that the Palestinians are being massacred by the occupation in Gaza. And keep in mind, and we've talked about this about 100 times, Israel left Gaza in 2006. There wasn't a single Jew there at all until Hamas crossed the border in October of 2023 and started massacring every Jew they could find. and took hundreds of hostages, including Americans. And Israel crossed the border for the first time to go get them back, which has still been going on almost for a year. However, do not let the facts confuse poor Greta Thunberg because, well, that ruins the narrative. Gaza has been occupied forever, and that's why she supports the Palestinians. She's now 21 years old, by the way. She's all grown up, and she's been a staple at anti-Israel rallies throughout Scandinavia. She was at an encampment at Stockholm University. She doesn't go to school there. Not even sure she finished high school. She has 14 million followers on Instagram. She wants to cut all ties and agreements and collaborations with the genocidal apartheid state of Israel. Never been there, in spite of our, well, dozens and dozens of proof shows of videos that there is no apartheid in Israel. Greta Thunberg, who is an avid TikToker, got all of her news from there. So she is now one of those people. Does not mention the 1,200 slaughter, does not mention the babies put in ovens or the elderly people slaughtered in front of their grandchildren. She just wants an immediate ceasefire and justice and freedom for the Palestinians. And they keep putting her on the news.
It's no surprise that she sided with these pro-Hamas Palestinian terrorists. There's no surprise. You know, everything that she's been a part of has been part of the globalist agenda, trying to push people off the edge, trying to convince people that the world is going to come to an end if we don't depopulate the earth per se. You know, that's because that's what it's really about. And now, of course, she's all in the spotlight, you know, because she has a new movement. She's moving, she's bouncing from one to the next, because she wasn't talking about this 6 years ago, right? She wasn't saying anything 6 years ago. None of these people were saying this 6 years ago.
She was a baby. She was in middle school then. If she even went to school, I don't even know. You know, but she didn't say one single word about releasing the hostages kept in cages, literally, underground in Gaza. Nothing about release the babies who have been underground all this time. Nothing about the execution of the 6 hostages 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, I don't think no one would expect her to say anything about it because she doesn't care. I mean, she's demonstrated that she doesn't really care. She goes along with every lie that they're telling, and she's more than likely she's getting paid. I don't know who's paying her, but you know, someone is paying her to go out there and advocate for this globalist agenda. This is what it really comes down to: is a globalist agenda. Now, we talked about it before. They're just meeting at the UN this week, talking about what they're going to do with Israel.
A bunch of people who have never been there. Nobody's talking about the hostages, just peace.
Yeah, and the peace that they're looking for is that Israel is completely gone and it's just Palestine, which there is no Palestine, but that's what they want to call it. This is the same United Nations that agreed that Israel is a state. The same United Nations. This same United Nations is now trying to say that Israel should not exist. The same United Nations. They're siding with a terrorist organization, and they say that, well, we want to bring peace, and Israel is being stubborn by not complying to the peace agreement that they have on the table. How could they agree to that? And of course, the United Nations, they're not talking about any of these hostages. They're not going to, because that's not the problem. The problem is because Israel exists. That's the problem for them. So they're never going to say anything about it. She's not going to say anything about it.
You're right. You're right. Well, I got some good news for you. We've been talking about DEI for a long time, and another big multi-billion-dollar company worldwide has given up on DEI. And I'm talking about heavy equipment maker Caterpillar. I think they make more tractors around the world than any other company, and they make the big ones. They're making changes after they've investigating and reversing their diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And Well, let me show you what they look like. This is one of their tractors. As you can see, the operator is flying the American flag on it because he's a patriot, which is typical of a lot of construction workers. They said that all corporate training is now focused on business operations only because they're a business. They figured that out. And any deviation requires approval from senior leaders. You cannot bring in external speakers anymore. You can't do surveys. You can't do awards. Yay for them. They're going to run a tractor business instead of some social justice experiment. Remember
Yeah,
this guy we've talked about, Robbie Starbuck, that's going after all these companies. He was chasing Caterpillar as well. And he was about to release an expose on their woke policies. And the company goes, whoa, maybe we'll take a look at them first. And they threw them all out because they realized, A, it's not selling any more tractors, right? B, their customers were really angry and starting to look at other brands because there are other brands that aren't woke, right? And C, when they look at the other big companies that are giving up on DEI that go along with the insanity, doesn't make sense anymore. Like, for example, Molson Coors, which makes Coors beer, just scrapped all their DEI policies, just threw them out. They figured out that unlike Bud Light, beer drinkers don't want to buy the beer because the person selling the beer is wearing a dress. And he's Dave.
Yeah. And Dave.
You know what I mean? That really doesn't help. And they're not doing any more surveys. They're not doing any more employee research groups. The website that laid out all their stuff has been modified. So the gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, et cetera, has been revised. Good for them. Lowe's did the same thing and threw that out. Caterpillar's gone along with it. Ford last month said it's making changes to its policies and would not comment anymore on these issues. I can tell you that the Transgender and Queer Employees Review compiled by the Progressive Human Rights Campaign is very upset. And these big corporations are going, so what? We're in the business of selling tractors or beer or lumber. So you go do your social experimenting with the 0.1% of the mentally ill somewhere else.
Yeah. And I can imagine that they're upset because they're no longer getting these companies to comply to their DEI. And, and we've talked about it before. And one of the reasons why these companies were taking this up is because they got this social justice credit score. And they didn't want to have a low score. And it's all of this is coming.
Stop. That's exactly right. They were all scared to death of a low score.
Yes.
You hit the nail on the head. Because this Transgender and Queer Employees Index of the Human Rights Campaign would rate them low, and they'd panic.
Yes, they rate them low, and they rate them low, but that rating never resonated or even trickled down to their buyers. They had no idea about this score. Who cared about that score? No one cared about that score, but these companies, because they were like, oh my goodness, we got to think about it. We can't offend anybody. We have to be, inclusive. And they were like, okay, well, let's just comply with it. You know the reason why I think they complied with it, Barry, is because they know how these social justice warriors will attack a business, and they will decimate a business. They will destroy a business if they don't comply with their wokeism. But when it comes to companies like Coors, and it comes to, Caterpillar, when it comes to these companies where Americans that love America, that have been buying it, if they came out and said it, guess what would happen? Oh, you're attacking them? I'm going to go buy me a tractor. I don't need a new one, but I'm going to go buy it because you're attacking them. For
Let me
some
ask you a
reason,
question.
they got disconnected. They don't even think about that.
Have you ever been to Lowe's? You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like Home Depot.
yeah.
We've got a huge Lowe's here. Every time I go there, it's like 98% guys. The parking lot is all pickup trucks. They're buying lumber and cement and paint and ladders and weed whackers.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Same thing here.
it's like a guy's department store for building stuff. I didn't
Yes.
see anybody in a dress and high heels that's a man. Okay. I didn't see any cross dressers with lipstick on. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe
The
because you're not looking
customer,
for them either.
well, I would have noticed everybody's in jeans and work boots.
Yeah,
You know what I
even the
mean?
women. The women are in jeans and work boots. I mean,
It's
because they're
true.
working. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Know your customer, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think the bottom line is, as you've just said, they figured out we're not selling to guys in dresses. There might be a couple. Okay, we're not going to turn them away. We'll take their
No.
credit card like anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. I always talked about if I had a restaurant and someone came in and buy a hamburger and fries from me, and it was a guy with a dress on, I would take his order, give him his food without any extra special ingredients, just the way it comes, give it to him, have a nice day. I don't need to have a conversation. I don't need to ask him his transition. I don't need to know any of that. Here's your food that you paid for. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Now, the problem comes in, Barry, is if I have a restaurant and I make cakes, and then they come into my restaurant and they want me to change what I do in my restaurant for their feelings, for their needs. And I say, no, I'm not going to do that. This is the service I provide. If you don't like the service that I provide, then you can always go next door. But they don't think that way. They want you to change. And that's exactly the same thing happened with these major corporations. They went into these corporations. We want you to change we see who you're selling to, but we want you to change for our needs and our feelings about this situation. And it has nothing to do with it. Burger and fries don't care what you put on in the morning, what you take off in the evening. They don't care. You pay for your food and you go. You buy your cake, and if you want to do extra things with the cake, if you want to do extra things with American pie, we don't need to know about it.
Exactly. Well, a number of times we have played videotapes of Muslim imams, preachers, saying absolutely horrible things overseas. And over the last 6 months, more and more of them from the United States. And how do we get those tapes? It's not with secret hidden cameras, where people sneak into the mosque. They put their own videotapes on YouTube, and we can grab it right off YouTube. Here's an example of one of those guys in Florida preaching the Muslim gospel. Listen to his words. He is telling you in English.
Just criticizing Hamas, and that's it. And you never ever touch the pulse rate of the criminals who have done what they did that caused Hamas to do what they did. You never mention that. That's not reading the room. Nobody is pro Hamas, but we're pro hikmah, pro being able to read the room. The Bani Israel were cursed by Dawood ibn Sulaiman, by Dawood, and on the tongue of Isa ibn Maryam, their own prophets cursed them. Why? Because that they used to make al-isyan, and used to just disobey Allah, and they used to go overboard. Instead of stopping the munkar, they used to do the munkar. And when Allah changed Bani Israel into monkeys and swines, the ulama who gave the tafsir of the Quran said, the ones who did the evil, they were turned into the monkeys, and the one who allowed them to do the evil were turned into the swine, because they used to allow that stuff to happen. When they had a religious responsibility, collectively, to say no. And we see that's something that is within them today.
Okay, 4 points because the sound was a little garbled. Number one, Hamas had to do what they did, slaughtering thousands, because the Israelis, I guess, went against the word of God. Number one. Number two, he said, Jesus and David and Solomon, all in the Bible, went against Allah. The Muslim religion came along 600 years later,
Mm-hmm.
but Jesus violated the rules of Allah. Did you catch that? It's craziness. And then number three, the Jews were turned into monkeys by Allah. I'm not quite sure which Jews or which monkeys. And the people that allowed them to break Allah's rules
Yeah.
were turned
Turn into
into
swine.
pigs.
Yeah.
If you listen to that sermon and you were a believer and you lived in Florida, it would be very hard for you to get along with your neighbors who might have been Jews. And you might be very easily convinced to do something very violent because you're carrying out the words and the instructions of Allah. And you don't want to be turned into a swine or a monkey.
Yeah.
Get it? That's how
Yeah.
vicious these people are.
You
Don't
know,
think it's not here.
yeah, it is here. It absolutely is here. We see them marching in the streets of New York. We see them marching in the streets of Minnesota. We see them marching in Dearborn. We see them in Chicago. We see them in Oakland. We see them in LA. We see them in Miami. They are here. And I just believe that they're just waiting, right? You know what a sleeper cell is, right? I think they're
God,
just
yes.
waiting to be activated. I think they're just waiting for the one party that's been supporting them all this time and they've actually been flying some of them into the country. They're just waiting for them to say go. But they are here.
Incredible.
But they're here. I mean, I'm assuming this guy speaking in English, he's probably what, maybe Michigan or something like that.
He's in Florida.
Oh, he's in Florida. Oh, see, right there. See, right there. He's in Florida, and not surprising, right? And they're not here to assimilate either. They are
Oh,
here.
no. So wait a
They
minute.
are here to
Assimilation is
change
against their
the
religion.
country to their religion. Yeah.
It's against their religion to assimilate.
Yes. Yeah.
It's against their religion to participate in democracy. It's against their religion to let women walk around on their own. It's against their religion to let a woman disobey you without a beating. I mean, on and on and on and on and on. You got to read the book, please. Will Johnson, on the other end of the spectrum, there was a great American hero who, when I read his words, I get really inspired, named Martin Luther King Jr. And it's interesting how the aggressive Black community not only doesn't read Martin Luther King, doesn't follow Martin Luther King, they destroy the statues of Martin Luther King. This man was so great. He led a movement that changed America for voting, for housing, for education, for integration. And he was all about doing it nonviolently. And his partners at the front of every marching line were Jews. And they had an unbreakable bond between them. One of his many teachings, which I think Americans ought to really take to heart, is this: when people criticize Zionists, they mean Jews. You're talking anti-Semitism when you attack Zionism. Zionism meaning the return of Jews to their ancestral homeland. And maybe that's why during the riots after George Floyd, Lincoln statues were desecrated. Frederick Douglass statues were desecrated. Martin Luther King statues were desecrated. Our heroes of this country who literally made it equal color-wise were all being decimated. Unbelievable. You know, it's really, really unbelievable. He talks about, I've got a bunch of quotes here about the organizations that walked with him, and there was rabbi this and rabbi that, on and on and on and on. And he said the only reason why there's a group that wants to support the Arabs over Israel is for the oil. Duh. It's not like they're great humanitarians. It's not like there's any equality. It's not like they support us. We want their oil. And he was right. And we still
Yeah.
do.
Yes. Yes.
Because without the oil, we're screwed, right? He said, Israel is a marvelous example of what can be done, how a desert land can be transformed into an oasis of brotherhood and democracy. Peace for Israel means security, and that security must be a reality. And 2 weeks later, he was assassinated by a
Imagine
white
that.
racist. Unbelievable.
Imagine that.
A nice lesson to take. I wish the kids today studied him in school like I did when I was a kid.
Yeah, the only thing that Martin Luther King did that I disagree with, or it actually messed up and it changed the black community, is that when he made a deal with the devil. Because when he was marching against the Democrat Party. That's who he was marching against at the time. It was what LBJ. Remember LBJ Kennedy? Then LBJ was there. Well, LBJ despised black people, but they
Oh, yeah.
realized
You
that.
know, he
But
used the N-word every day.
oh yes, and they realized that they could vote, and because they could vote, and they were making a lot of noise because of the marching that was happening. So he made a deal. Martin Luther King made a deal with him, and LBJ said, "We'll just give these N words just a little bit, make them feel like they have something, but we will have them voting for Democrats. We'll have them voting for Democrats for the next 200 years." And they did it within 60 years. And as of today, when we walk down the street, when we meet somebody for the first time, because of the way society's been created in America, it's just automatically thinking that black people are going to support the Democrat Party because by and large, that is the case. That's what happened. They were very successful. So I disagree with Martin Luther King when he did that. But his marching, I understood it. I completely agree. Who was marching with him? I completely agree. It's just he made the deal with the devil, and they've decimated the black community ever since.
Welcome to politics. Here's a wild one for you, Will Johnson. UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Works Agency, that's supposed to be a temporary agency to take care of the Palestinians, has become an agency of Hamas. It's gotten so bad that videotapes taken by Hamas during the massacre in October of last year and GoPro'd and then mounted on YouTube and TikTok, UNRWA employees were identified on those videos. Israel sent those videos to the UN, and so far the UN has done
Nothing.
bingo. Here's what's gotten really weird. The United Nations has filed paperwork in an American court to secure legal immunity for the participants in the October 7th massacre. These are people employed by UNRWA that participated in the slaughter of those civilians on October 7th. Guess who is supporting the UN in this motion? The Biden administration, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Saying they should
Not
have
surprised.
immunity because at the time of the massacre, they were UN employees. I'm so stunned. I'm stunned by the UN saying, no, you can't prosecute them. But it's devastating to think the American government, our government, is siding with the murderers who committed this genocide, including the slaughter of Americans, saying, well, when they did the killing, they worked for the UN so they should be immune. That's insane. And the court filings are there.
Is it?
19 of the employees were identified by Israel, and the UN has come out and said, well, 9 of them were probably involved. We're not sure about the other 10, but we're giving them all immunity, even the ones that we think committed murder.
Wow.
And when I say murder, here's a picture of one of them driving back into Gaza City with someone he killed on the back of his motorcycle, and you can see the celebration of the neighborhood. They're not sad about it. They think this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. This isn't civilization. This is insanity. Can you imagine driving a dead body on the back of your motorcycle to adoring?
You sure he's just not sleeping?
He's dead. They've identified who killed him, and they've identified the victim.
And they're all celebrating it. You know what, Barry? You know how this is so disturbing at so many levels, and the United Nations is one of the major problems in all of this. So you have these pro-Hamas Palestinian terrorists doing all of these terrible things. You got the Hamas doing terrible things, and you have UNRWA involved in the terrible things that took place. But they're not wanting to arrest anyone there, hold anyone accountable for the horrific acts that they've done. But they want to hold Bibi accountable for defending Israel. Make it make sense. Somebody smacked me because I must be dreaming. How does this happen? Here it is. He's trying to defend himself, and you have to look. And I've said this multiple times. When you got a cockroach problem, there's only one way to solve the cockroach problem. You can't go over there and feed the cockroaches because all they do is multiply. And, they tried to do that. They tried to be nice to the cockroaches, but the cockroaches just kept multiplying. Then the cockroaches started invading. The cockroaches started killing people. There's only one thing you can do with cockroaches and rats. There's only one thing you can do, because other than that, they serve no purpose. So Benjamin Netanyahu is getting rid of the cockroaches and these fat rodents running around the street. I mean, just fat rodents. And he's getting rid of them, but he's the problem. He's the problem. They want to bring up charges against him. They want the world community to arrest him. Really? But then they glorify and they elevate people who do these horrible acts. Again, and I'm going to say it again. Something's wrong with our society. Something is truly wrong.
Oh, we can make a list just from today's show.
Oh my goodness.
The Queers for Palestine movement really ought to watch the video I'm going to play now. This is from Israeli television, and they brought on Arab expert in the hadiths, which are the rules about Muhammad taught. And you need to really listen closely at what this guy is saying. This is him. I don't have the video. I'm going to read it to you. He said, Muhammad specified the punishment for homosexual activities. Quote, the messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, whoever you find doing the action, execute the one who does it and the one to whom it is done. This is Saeed Badran, the picture here. He said, and Christianity also has a similar scripture, which it doesn't call for execution of gays. He said, they are unnatural and they should be taken out of the society. They're outside of nature. He supports killing them wherever they are found. It shouldn't matter if it's an Islamic state, a Judaic state, or a Christian state. All these states would execute gay people if they believed in their own religion. It was such a shocking statement to stay on Israeli television. he's probably going to go to jail, because there's only one country that protects gays, and that's Israel. And in
Yes.
spite of that, this was a sign I grabbed off the internet from last week. Queers for Palestine. U.S. war, racist attacks, blah, blah, blah. If any one of those queers for Palestine ended up in Palestine, as this guy says, they would be put to death.
Yes.
Why don't they know this?
You know, I think they do know, Barry. I think the whole point of this is to show compassion, show that they're caring, that they're loving. And by them doing this, they can sway those that would disagree with it to join in with them. Kumbaya. but but them like, okay, yeah, we love you now, we love you, we agree with you, come on over, just
Well,
buy one-way ticket, just buy
as
one-way
you know,
ticket.
I've been there, and I've seen the building they use to execute the gays. It's not very high, but it's high enough to kill you slowly. They just
Yeah, I heard they, you know, they toss you, and then you don't go immediately. You know, then they kick you, they throw rocks at you, they do other stuff at you while you're slowly in pain fading out.
as an
It's horrible.
example for other people not to catch the same disease, because
Yeah.
they think it's behavioral, and they think
Yeah.
that Allah wants them all killed. Unbelievable. Speaking of unbelievable, the New York Times, this is our closing story, went to Doha, Qatar, to interview the head of, well, one of the heads of Hamas, Khaled Michel, who is a multi-billionaire. They think he's worth between 4 and 5 billion. He lives like a sheik, private jets, 1 million wives. I saw the pictures. It's unbelievable how much money. It's all stolen from the European Union and the United Nations and the United States. And John Fetterman went crazy when he saw the New York Times headline, which says, Hamas is surviving the war in Israel, and now it hopes to thrive in Gaza again. New York Times didn't call him out on the 1,200 people slaughtered on October 7th or the people that were kidnapped. They said that Mr. Mashal offered rare insights into the thinking of Hamas officials, as if he was just a political leader. And I watched this interview with John Fetterman, and he said, I have no idea why the New York Times would platform this propaganda from a terrorist. Undoubtedly, Israel will hold him accountable. Hamas is no different than the World War II Nazis, and I fully support Israel's commitment to neutralize them. Unbelievable. It said the New York Times said the United States accused Hamas leaders of playing a central role in planning the October 7th attacks, but didn't he actually blame them for it when they brag about it every day? And the paper says Hamas is still winning, and that Israel's military is in a state of attrition, and that Hamas will survive. It's almost like, I mean this literally, the New York Times, and John Fetterman talked about this, a senator from Pennsylvania, as if the New York Times is a publicity agent or arm of Hamas. Sort of like they hate Donald Trump, they seem to hate America, they surely hate Israel.
I mean, would it be safe to say the same thing about AP, Associated Press, the PBS, and what other one am I leaving out?
Washington Post.
Washington Post, of course, New York Times, and then there's one other one, BBC. All right, all of these are anti-American, and they're all pro-Hamas. They're all of them, every last one of them.
And they
I saw a video.
They sell a lot of papers.
Yeah, I saw a video with John Fetterman actually saying that Trump is gonna win. I'm like,
I saw that too.
because you know what? He may have had a stroke and had issues, but looked like some sense got knocked into him or something. Because he's like slowly like coming around. I'm like,
I got to be honest with you. You and I joked about it when after he had his stroke, and he was a mess, and could barely talk. And the farther he goes from his injury, his recovery, he just seems to be getting smarter and smarter and smarter.
it's like something, a light bulb went off. It's like he was that caterpillar, and he had to go in that cocoon. It was terrible for him to go through it, and he came out, and he's starting to blossom. I mean, really, because he's like, I'm like, I want to like him, like I don't like him, but I want to like him. You know, it's like it's mixed feelings, right?
He's not the snappiest dresser, okay?
Right.
In hoodie and high tops and whatever, but I really like what he says. I got to be honest with you.
He's actually been saying some very positive things to where the Democrats are hating him right now.
Oh,
I mean, they're hating him,
especially about Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, they're hating him right now. Code Pink is hating him right now,
which makes him likable by us.
Yeah, so if the left hates him, then you know what? Hey, okay, you're okay. We're forgiving people. We're forgiving people. We see that you've learned. We see that you learned. Hey, okay, you're starting to get some support. We're gonna have a reservation about it, but hey, way to go.
Better than a year ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Great show, Will. Thanks for coming on. For all of you out there, remember, go to American Truth Project, sign up for free. You get all of our content. Doesn't cost you anything. Findbarry.com. And Will Johnson is very easy to locate at Unite America First, and he doesn't charge for content either. Check us out when we're not on with you. In the meantime, we will see you next week on Thursday, same time as usual. Bye for now.